Very good morning, students. I, Dr. Sangamita Das, welcome you all to this session of international marketing, where we will be talking about the identification of the international markets. The main learning objectives of this particular session will be getting an explanation about the significance of the segmentation and targeting of the international markets. So we'll be discussing about the identification of the international markets. We'll talk about the delineation selection of international markets. So, what happens actually is that international expansion of a firm's activities requires identification of marketing opportunities across the borders, evaluating and selecting one or few countries for its operations. So, a business enterprise needs to employ its finite resources most gainfully in countries where it gets optimum returns to fulfill its goals and objectives. But what happens that a large business enterprise always actually is faced by the limitations of the resources for expansion into new activities and geographical areas. So an internationalizing company should carefully evaluate the marketing environment and select the most appropriate location for its expansion where it can operate and compete most effectively. So, if we talk about the identification of the international markets, there are two types of approaches for the identification. One is the reactive approach and one is the systematic approach. So, in reactive approach, what happens that mostly the firms, particularly the small firms, the small and the medium enterprises, that is the SMEs, internationalize as an unintended response to an international marketing opportunity in the form of unsolicited exports. In doing so, the positive stimulus in terms of increased profitability, turnover, market share, or image leads to catering to the overseas markets. So, consequently, carrying out marketing across the border becomes an integral part of the firm's marketing strategy. Then you have the systematic approach. Systematic approach is generally adopted by larger companies with relatively higher level of resources in country identification, evaluation and selection. A firm has to carry out the preliminary selection of various countries before a refined analysis is carried out for a country selection. There are various institutes which actually facilitate the identification of the international markets. Trade statistics is available from secondary sources that may be used for preliminary market scanning. One can use published data from multilateral organizations such as United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, that is UNCTAD. Then we have World Bank. Then we have International Monetary Fund, that is the IMF. Then we have World Trade Organization, that is WTO, and national organizations like India's Directorate General of Commercial Intelligence and Statistics. Import promotion organizations are also there, like Center for Promotion of Import from Developing Countries and import promotion offices from a number of high income countries such as the UK, Finland, Norway, and Japan also provide enormous information and services for investors. Besides information provided by the commercial banks, the country's missions overseas and foreign missions in the home country, newspapers, magazines, periodicals, and research reports are also helpful for identifying and evaluating the international marketing opportunities. Then we also have various import promotions organizations like we have established in 1971 Center for Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries, that is CBI. It facilitates the imports into European countries. The major services it provides is our market information and matchmaking, export development of businesses, training and institutional development of business support opportunities. Its clients include companies willing to export to Europe, business support organizations in developing countries, and companies from Europe who wish to buy from developing countries. So now we talk. Now let us talk about the segmentation of the international markets. So as you all know that market segmentation refers to dividing the market mm, of potential customers into homogeneous subgroups. So segmentation is needed because substantial differences exist in response of market to a particular marketing strategy. So what is happening is over here that a small firm can compete more effectively in specific market segments as it concentrates its resources on the target segment. For a market segment to be effective, it must be measurable, it must be accessible, it should be differentiable, and it should be actionable. So what is measurable? Measurable means the size, the purchasing power, and characteristics of the segment can be measured. Substantial Then we have it should be substantial also. Substantial means the segments are large and profitable enough to be served. Then we have accessible, that means the segments can be effectively reached and served. It should be accessible. Then it should be differentiable, that means the segments are conceptually distinguishable and respond differently to different marketing mix elements and programs. Then the segment should be actionable, that is it should be have effective programs can be formulated for attracting and serving the segments. So international market segmentation is defined as the process of identifying and dividing the customers around the world into distinct subsets that respond to a particular marketing strategy. As the customers of a particular segment have similar needs that can be addressed through a uniform marketing strategy, it is advisable to adopt differentiated marketing strategies for different market segments. Then we talk about the various types of segmentation in the international market. So the first I've taken is geographical segmentation. Under geographic segmentation is actually done when the marketers divide into geographic when the marketers divide the market into various geographical subsets. Although the geographical segmentation is easier to monitor and measure, it does not always ensure uniformity in customer habits among the consumers due to geographical proximity. For example, Burma is our next door neighbor of India, but the market structure and consumption patterns are entirely different for that country. So you have to see that how it is differentiated, how the geographical differentiation is done. Then we talk about demographic segmentation, which is done on the basis of characteristics, age, gender, family size, and education. So, this type of market segmentation has reasonable accuracy in measurement and easy to access. Besides, demographic information is readily available, updated, and relatively accurate in most of the countries. Over here, I've given some examples that how the country is divided as low income group country or lower or middle income countries, upper middle income countries, and high income countries. So this is the distinction on the basis of this is an example of demographic segmentation. Then the segmentation can also be done on the basis of age, or you can say on the basis of household income. On the basis of household income, the Indian market may be segmented as upper middle class having a household income of over 8.5 lakhs per year, that comprise 14% of the total population. Then you have the middle income, the middle class, which has an income ranging from 3 to 8.5 lakhs with a population that is 23% of the population, and an emerging middle class with income ranging from 1.5 to 3 lakhs, which constitutes 42% of the population, and poor with income below 1.5 lakhs comprising 21% of the population. So in this way the segmentation is done on the basis of household income. Now we talk about the segmentation that is done on the basis of age. Over here we have taken actually over here I have taken the example of the Chinese market, where there you can see the various generations or that have been distinguished on the basis of age. So if we talk about generation 1, that is it is ranging from age 45 to 59. So this generation is actually very talented and it got university education and are high officials. This is the generation of the socialistic society. Then we have generation number 2, whose age ranges from age 30 to 44. This generation had lost opportunity to get proper education. Mainly, it works for state-owned enterprises where income does not reflect job performance. Then those married are willing to spend as much as possible for the little emperor, their only child, at the expense of their pleasure. In many cases, what generation 2 purchases is based on what the child wants or needs. So this is generation number 2, which is actually catering to the needs of their only child. Then we have generation number 3, which includes the people whose age lies between age 18 to 29. For a marketer, this is the most attractive segment because these the people who are lying within this segment have a good educational background with opportunity to work for foreign multinational firms. They are blessed with a good aspect of the market economic system that promises a brighter future for people who earn enough money. For international marketers, Generation 3 is the most attractive market segment, as I already told you, also known as S generation, that is the single child generation, which has the following common characteristics. They have the luxury principle. That means they spend a disproportionate amount of money on one thing at the expense of the others. They have a strong drive towards high personal consumption level. Then you have the consumption of the Western feeling. That is, the material goods are a medium for them to experience Western culture. Then you have the aspiration of big names. They tend to be very fond of famous brand name products. Then you have the newer, the better syndrome. They like to go after the newest products. Then you have one cut above the rest mentality. That is the segment they like to impress the others. So once segmentation is complete, the priority is to focus on those target markets that generate the greatest revenue at the least investment. Then we have segmentation that can be done on the basis of psychology. So we have psychographic segmentation. So dividing the consumer into different groups on the basis of lifestyle, personality, or values is termed as psychographic segmentation. Consumers who are lying within this group, within the same demographic clusters, may have different psychographic profiles. As psychographic market segmentation go beyond national boundaries, it facilitates in developing an international marketing strategy. So, if we segment, uh, you can see over here that I've given some examples of uh, psychographic segmentation. That is, the strivers. The first one is strivers who lay a high emphasis on material and professional goals. One third of Asians are strivers. Then you have the devotes who value traditions and duty and include more women than men. Then you have the altruists who comprise 18% of the population, who are more interested in social issues and social welfare and consist of slightly more women than men of older age, with a median of 44. Latin America and Russia have more altruists. Then we have the intimates, who consist of 15% of the population. They place more value on close personal relationship and family above all, and include men and women almost equally. One fourth of America and 7% in Asia consist of intimates. Then we have the fun seekers, which consist of 12% of the population. That is the youngest group with a male-female ratio of 54 is to 56, found in disproportionate number in developing Asia. Then you have the creatives, who have strong interest in education, knowledge, and technology. Next, we have the segmentation of the Indian youth. So, the Indian youth is actually falling within the age group of 15 to 24, which constitutes 60% of India's population. It got exposed to the West through the media, so it has the following segments. The first one is homebodies. They're largely traditional, have low individuality. They think that duty and morality at the core of their values. They're not much into brands, and last, they're the last to pick up on trends and fashions. They are more focused on education but not on career. Then you have the two-faced, that is inwardly traditional and outwardly they're very modern. Once married, they know they will have to abide by prescribed norms. They need to be aggressive to go ahead in life. Then we have the wannabes. That is the largest cluster, the massive mainstream materialistic show offs. They trend followers who aggressively seek out lifestyle cues and adapt them to feel more confident. Then you have the rebels. Their parents are very traditional. These rebellions need not to be overt. Perhaps the first generation that is getting education and they're becoming professionals and experiencing the winds of change. They heavily rely on friends and not understood by the parents. The fifth one is the cool guys. They are actually the influencers who all others want to be. They work very hard and play very hard. They are very confident, and they have strong individuality. Their friends are, for them, friends are very important, and West is a dream for their studies. They have lots of aspirations and they enjoy life in a fast lane. So, this was a psychographic segmentation of the Indian youth. Now we talk about the segmentation of the international market on the basis of marketing opportunity. So the first one is the existing market. So these are markets that are already serviced by existing suppliers and where customer needs are known. The marketing opportunities can be assessed by estimating the consumption rates and import patterns in these countries. Then you have the latent markets. So the latent markets are recognized by potential customers, but no company has actually so far offered a product to fulfill the latent needs. So there is no existing market. As market potential is known and there is no direct competition in the market, market entry is relatively easier once a firm is able to convince the customer about the benefits of its market offerings. Then we have the incipient market. Incipient markets Actually, there is no demand at present in the market, but the conditions and trends that indicate future emergence of needs can be identified. So, as indicated, the marketing opportunities may be classified into three distinct product types also. That is as follows. The it can be competitive product, that is one that has no significant advantage over those already in offer. So these are the me too products. Then you have the improved product, that is not unique but provides some improvement over the presently available market offering. Then you have the breakthrough products that represent significant differentiation with innovation and therefore has considerable competitive advantage. So that you can see the demand patterns are different for these three types of products in existing market. A product you can see from the matrix over here. In existing market, a product needs to be breakthrough or superior so as to offer a high competitive market strength. Since there is not direct competition in latent market, an improved product may also succeed. In incipient markets, as demand for the product is yet to be generated, competitive products in other markets may also be launched. However, a breakthrough products offer considerable competitive advantage if market need is identified or created. Then segmentation can also be done on the basis of market attractiveness. So we have various type of countries in this. Some countries are called platform countries that can be used to gather intelligence and establish a marketing network. For example, Singapore and Hong Kong. Then you have emerging markets which include Vietnam and Philippines, whose major goal is to build initial presence. Then you have growth markets such as China, India, Thailand, which can offer early mover advantage. Then you have the maturing markets like Taiwan, Korea, which offer a fewer growth prospect than the other markets. Then we have the established markets like Japan, where the growth prospects are much lower. Now we talk about the preliminary screening for selection of international markets. So, since a market has actually limited size, limited resources, it has to focus on a few foreign markets. Besides proper selection of markets, it has to avoid wastages of the firm's time and resources so that it can concentrate on a few fruitful markets. So, before arriving at a country or group of countries as the target market, a preliminary screening of countries may be carried out employing various criteria as follows. So, the first one is market size. So, a firm that is looking forward to entering the international market needs to access the present market and future potential. It should be borne in mind that developed countries are not always the largest markets. So, market size depends on the number of factors which will be discussed below. So, the first factor is population. So, the population of the market broadly gives a rough estimate of market size, though it has to be used with some other indicators also, like China with a population about 1.3 billion is the most populous country in the world, followed by India with a population of over 1.2 billions. So the other most populous countries also include USA, Indonesia, Brazil, Pakistan, but it does not always mean that the most populous countries are the largest markets in the world. However, for necessary goods with low unit value, such as food products, you have healthcare items, you have educational products, bicycles, etc. Population provides a gross indicator of the market size. Then the next is income. So income actually means what? It means the consumers need to buy the product in the market. So the GDP of a country provides a better estimate of the market size as compared to the population. For example, the USA has the highest GDP, that is the purchasing power parity, which is followed by China. Okay, so this is how income affects the selection of a market. So the growth rate per capita GDP facilitates in the estimation of the future market potential. Then we talk about the accessibility to the international markets, because a market can have various type of barriers. It can have tariff barriers, it can have non-tariff barriers, it can have financial controls also. Then when entering into a market, we also have to check the profitability, whether entering into the market is profitable for us or not. So that also has to be checked while entering into a foreign market. Then we have the various tools, actually the tools for international market evaluation and selection. So over here, so the various analytical tools for market evaluation and selection also facilitates firms to develop and adopt differential marketing strategies for different country segments. So the various tools that are available are trade analysis and analogy methods, opportunity risk analysis is there. Then you have product country matrix strategy, then you have growth share matrix and market attractiveness, company strength matrix. So we'll be talking about one by one in brief as follows. So the first one is the trade analysis method. That is one of the easiest and the relatively quick method of estimating market size for a country is by of analysis of its trade data. So in simple terms, the market size of a country may be determined by subtracting the exports of a product from the sum total of its production and imports. So you can see over here that market size is equal to production plus imports minus the exports. So that is the trade analysis method. Then you have the analogy method. For new product categories with very little consumption and production in the past, various types of analogy methods are employed. In the analogy method, a country at similar stage of economic development and comparable consumer behavior is selected, whose market size is known. Besides, a surrogate measure is also identified, which has similar demand to the product for the international market. Alternatively, the analogy method for different time periods, which may be compared with similar demand pattern in two different countries, may also be used. Then you have the opportunity risk analysis. You can see over here in the diagram that I have made an matrix over here where the various opportunities in the various countries are A, B, C, and D. The opportunities lies are market size, the growth, the competitive intensity, the operation cost, the market efficiency. In risk, we have the political factors, the commercial factors, the economical factors, and the operational factors. So, on the basis of marketing opportunities and risk, ranking of various countries may be made for investment. So, countries with low risk and high returns are often preferred investment destination. In addition, such grids may also be referred for future projection also. So, such grids actually serve as a useful tool for cross country comparison of opportunity and risk. It hardly provides any insight into a relationship among the investment destinations. So, countries for investment can also be plotted in the form of a matrix. And accordingly, you can select that which one is the most preferred country for you and which one is the least preferred country for you for entering into the international market. Then we have the Boston Consultancy Group. Uh, that is the which this is a technique which actually offers a useful tool to evaluate countries for different product categories based on their market share and growth rate. So products are classified actually under four categories on the lines of Boston Consulting Group matrix, which is based on the model. You can see over here in the model how it has been made. In this, you have high growth, high share star, or you can see the star products. These markets offer high growth potential but require a lot of resources to maintain the share in growth markets. Then we have the low growth, high share. We have the low growth, high share, that is the cash cows. These are products which bring higher profit, though slow market growth rate is there. Then you have the high growth or the low share products. That the products, or you can say that these are the dogs. Sorry, these are the actually these are the question marks. So these are the products. So these question marks are the products actually which are under high risk category with an uncertain future, sometimes called problem children. A highly competitive strategic marketing decision is required to invest resources to bring it to the category of stars by achieving a higher market share. Then we have the dogs, that is the low growth, low share products. These products have low growth and low market share. Therefore, generally do not call for investing much resources. Then we also have the distance model for selection of the international market. You can see over here that this model is having a geographical distance, we have political distance, we have psychic distance. So geographical distance means the countries with geographical proximity tend to be natural target markets due to lower physical distances and logistic complexities. So neighboring countries tend to be the natural target market, especially for products with lower unit value. Then you have the political distance. The political relationship between the governments of an exporting country with an importing country also influence the selection of target markets. Adverse political relation may hinder markets that are apparently attractive. Although physical and psychic distance is much lower between India and Pakistan, it is formidable political distance that makes Pakistan hardly the preferred market for most Indian firms. Then we have the economic distance, that is the final cost of product in the target market and the ease of transaction of business are determined by economic distance. Although there is very little physical distance between India and Burma, the economic distance is very high. Is considerably high because actually the banking, the telecommunication infrastructure in Burma is far from adequate. On the other hand, you can see the economic distance between India and UK is much lower than the distance between India and Myanmar. Then you have the psychic distance or the psychological gap, which often create communication barriers, which is being reflected in difference of languages, lifestyle, cultural orientation, awareness levels, political ideologies, etc., or the level of technical skills. As a result, the uncertainty about foreign markets and perceived difficulty in obtaining information about foreign markets is lower, and a firm find it's more convenient in dealing with firms in countries with fewer such barriers. So the narrowing of psychological gaps has helped China increase its trade in mostly the South Asian countries. Over here, you can see the diagram or you can see the model which is depicting the geographical distance, the political distance, the economic distance, and the psychic distance between the domestic farm and the target market. Then we talk about the various international positioning strategies. The positioning strategies can be high tech positioning. In this, the actually what is happening in this, that the personal computers are there, videos are there, stereo equipments are there. Such products are frequently purchased on the basis of concrete product features, although image may also be very important. So the buyers of this product are typically possess or wish to acquire considerable technical information. So high-tech products may be divided into three categories, that is the technical products, the special interest products, and the demonstrable products. So the technical products are those computers, the chemicals, the tires, the financial services are examples of product categories whose buyers have specialized needs. They require a great deal of product information and who share a common language. Then you have the special interest products. While less technical and more leisure or recreation oriented, special interest products also are characterized by a shared experience and high involvement among the users. Again, the common language and symbols associated with such products can transcend language and cultural barriers. You can have the Fuji bicycles, Adidas sport equipment, Canon camera, the example of successful global special interest products. Then you have the products that demonstrate well. These are the products that speak for themselves in advertisement of features and benefits. They also travel very well. Then you have high touch positioning products. So in the initial one, we did high tech positioning. Now we have high touch positioning. So the marketing of high touch products requires less emphasis on specialized information and more emphasis on the image. So, high touch categories are highly involving for customers. They are also divided into three categories: the products that solve a common problem, the global village products, and the products that use universal themes. So, you can see over here that the products that solve a common problem, you can see that other end of the price spectrum from high tech products in this category provide benefits linked to life's little moments. Advertisement that show friends talking over a cup of coffee in a cafe or quenching thirst with a soft drink during a day at the beach put the product at the center of everyday life and communicate the benefit offered in a way that is understood worldwide. So it is actually solving a common problem. Then you have global village products. Designer fashions, mineral water, pizza. These are all examples of products whose positioning is strongly cosmopolitan in nature. The fragrances and fashions have traveled as a result of growing worldwide interest in high quality, highly visible, high priced products that often enhance social status. However, the lower priced food products just mentioned show that global village category encompasses a broad price spectrum. And lastly, we have the products that use universal themes. Some advertising themes actually, some advertising themes and product appeals are thought to be basic enough that they are truly transnational. Additional themes are materialism, which are key to the images of well-being or status. Then you have heroism, themes which include rugged individuals or self-sacrifice. So these products have been shown as the products that have universal themes. So students, in this particular chapter we talked about identification of the international marketing opportunities, evaluating the various countries and targeting right markets, which is very crucial to access for the to the success of a firm in its international efforts. So that is all from my side for today. Thank you, students. We'll meet in the next session.